What is happening, everybody? Thank you so much for being here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. It's crazy in Portland, Oregon right now. It's almost 70 degrees, which normally would be rainy. And so I'm grateful to have you spending some time inside with me. Before we get started with my really cool guest today, let me thank my sponsors at 5-Star Guitars. Right here, 5-Star Guitars is based in Beaverton, Oregon, so there's no sales tax. If you're interested in playing guitar, they've got accessories, they've got lessons, they've got repairs. If you go to the link below, 5starguitars.com/all-access-live, you'll find about 6 or 7 pages of gear that you can save 15% off by using this promo code below. So use All Access 15 when you shop there, and not only can you get a great deal for no sales tax and 15% off, but when you become a fledgling guitarist, you can get lessons from pros like Jennifer Batten and other professionals in town. Jennifer, you might know from her days with Michael Jackson and Jeff Beck. She's got a Guitar Cloud Symposium that is coming up with Steve Lukather as a special guest. In the past, she's had Steve Vai and Dweezil Zappa and other pros. So go to guitarcloudsymposium.com and learn how to be an incredible guitarist with the best. If you've not yet done so, please subscribe to this channel at youtube.com/all-access-live with Kevin Rankin. You've probably already done that and gotten us here. Today, as I mentioned to my guests, we should be sliding into partnership now with YouTube, which means that I'll be able to up the production quality and allow sponsors to do a little bit more with advertising. So I'm thankful for you guys. If you've not yet done so, please hit the subscribe button at youtube.com/all-access-live. Now, business is done. It's time for some fun. Somebody that I have gotten to know over the past few years as a drummer and educator has actually become sort of this new wave or new age Renaissance man when we've had to change into the virtual education field. He's here with his son, incredible drummers, incredible educators. I've got Alan and Matthew Keown. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having us, Kevin.
I'm glad you're here. I'm going to try and find the best way for me to share our space here. How's this? That might be the one.
That's great.
So cool. You know, Alan, I've known you for a handful of years now. I've only known Matthew through his bio and pictures on your website. But we've got a father-son combo of some professionals here. So both of you, and maybe we can have you, Alan, talk a little bit about Alan Keown drum camps, and then we can go back a little bit in your history and talk about how you've evolved to where you're at today and what your boy's doing.
Sure. Well, the camp, Alan Keown Marching Percussion Camp, is in its 33rd year. Like,
that's crazy.
Way back. We started in 1989. We started at the University of Oregon as part of their summer camp program. We kept getting pushed further and further off campus because of the noise.
Oh, yeah.
So we ended up in a gravel parking lot in Autzen Stadium with no bathrooms and no shade.
Oh.
I said, hey, guys, raise your hand if you'd pay a little bit extra and we go up to a mountain camp and do this. And everybody's hands shot up. It's like, okay. So we kind of parted ways with the U of O establishment and went up to this little kind of ghetto Lutheran camp that we rent called Camp Serene. It's a beautiful place, but it's just down the road. There's a place called Camp Lutherwood, which has the pools and the horses and all this. Yeah, we got none of that.
Yeah.
But it's home. It's been home for 30 years to us, and it's very cool. The camp is a week long normally. They come in on Sunday night. They leave on Saturday at noon. We have a staff of amazing teachers from all over the country that we fly in to help teach this. It's marching percussion oriented and front ensemble oriented. So snare drums, quads, bass drums, marimba, vibes, all that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
We're probably the only camp, or one of the only 2 camps in the country. The other one's Matt Savage's camp, who he teaches my camp and I teach his camp, and then they're the same camp basically. But he does it in North Carolina, where we actually do march and play. So it's not just a hands camp. Normally, we move, we play, we do drill, we do drum solos. It's kind of the full meal deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that there's no rivalry there then between you and Matt because you're doing.
No, we're like brothers from another mother.
Yeah, no, For people that might not know how how marching percussion works in Drumline, and if you look at university bands, say, or even high school bands at that level where somebody really wants to take this to sort of a professional status, these guys are playing drums 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes more, right? And I know that the culture, especially like down in the Midwest and the South, that has been something that really it's become, something that almost everybody does. As if you're not playing a sport, then you're playing in those bands, right? And it is a sport, as a matter of fact, because I know it takes a ton of athletic activity, physical activity, and your camp kind of preps people for that, right? Because you're doing all day, you're mixing it up.
I know we go 9 to 9. We start at 9 in the morning. We finish up at 9 o'clock at night.
That's crazy.
The kids love it. They just love. They love to sweat and work out and just do it. March in the sun, and it's kind of a sickness almost.
Well, there's pride that goes along with it. I know. My own son. He talked about how there was this camaraderie that you develop. You develop relationships with these guys. You're living with them in the cabins, and you're around each other 24 hours a day. And you have this sense of pride, right? Because you're working really hard. And if everybody's working really hard together, you're accomplishing something. At the end, I know that you've got this presentation where you've got the show that you put together. And so there's a tangible thing that they can look forward to, but then they take all those things with them all year. It's something that I know that they talk about year round. I look at feedback from students that you've had for so many years, and it's changed their life. A lot of pro drummers in Portland have actually mentioned, "Oh my God, Alan Keown changed my life." And so, when you're there, I would imagine it's probably like boot camp, right? You're thinking, at first it's pretty tough, but
we talk about, the first couple of days. Monday's the hardest day because they come in Sunday night. All we pretty much do is do a drum circle and eat ice cream. That's
okay.
And Monday we hit it pretty hard. And Monday there's the getting used to the routine. We do all the auditions for the different groups. That's grueling and nitpicky and painstaking. And if any kid's going to bail and go home, it's going to be on Monday.
Okay.
We've had some do that. They just, I can't, this is too much. I say, dude, stick it out. Tomorrow will be way better. No, I'm going home. So we lose some.
That's tough. I mean, you're way out there though. It's not like you can just hitchhike home. You're
and they have to drive, from Boise or whatever to get them.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe Matthew can talk. I mean, that's kind of what it's like from an administrative standpoint and a teacher standpoint. Matthew is all of that now. He's my co-director and a very important teacher, staff member in the camp. But he grew up from 6th grade on doing this.
Okay.
Student.
Yeah. So how was that for you, Matthew? I mean, like watching your dad, because I know it takes a lot of time and energy to do a camp like that. This is not one of those things where you can tell somebody had an idea, maybe we'll have a whole bunch of kids show up in the woods and play drums. I know how much logistics go into this. So as you watched your dad spend all this time putting together something really substantial, did you feel kind of like maybe you were being left out, or did you feel like I want to be part of that and jump right in?
Well, I definitely wanted to be part of it, but I actually had no idea how much work it was until I went on the other side of the fence, right?
Sure.
So when I stopped marching drum corps, and so for people who don't know, that's kind of like the pro leagues of what marching percussion is, and you can only do that to a certain age. So
Right.
when I got done with that at age 21, then I came back on the other side of the fence and was doing the teacher side and the administrator side of the camp. And that's when I learned how much work it actually is, because when I was a kid and just going to the camp, it was just, I mean, it's something I looked forward to all year round and loved it and saw the final product. But I didn't see so much of the ins and outs of how it actually ran. So I'd say that it was definitely more recently that I started appreciating what goes into that and the amount of work and the man hours and the logistics and all of that. Now I try to pay my dad back, and I try to take over as much of that stuff as I can, because I know he did it for so many years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you must have a little more respect for sure to see what he's put into it. I was there. I saw the way that the camp was organized and run, and I felt like there was a lot of attention put into development, not just like rudimental development, but I think there was real development of people's sort of emotional development that went along with that too. I saw that there were. It's not like you. would sort of maybe equate yourselves with as a counselor, a camp counselor. It was more of like, you're a coach, it seemed to me. That's at least what I could tell. And now with the change of sort of the times with the pandemic, you guys had the option, like a lot of camps could have done, to just say, we're going to wait this thing out. But you found a way to do this thing virtually. And in a short amount of time, you completely flipped on its end. And so I'm interested. I mean, you've got the second year of virtual camps coming up this year. And I'm guessing you probably looked at some things that worked well last year and maybe what didn't work. So maybe tell me a little bit about maybe some stumbling blocks you had last year and then how you've approached this year with some of that. You first, Alan.
Well, what we wanted to do is we didn't decide to pull the trigger on the virtual camp until like May. We were holding out and holding out and holding out. This, the badness came about the middle of March. So April, we're sitting on our hands just going, what are we going to do? How's this going to play out? Is it going to be over in 15 days? Well, that didn't work out.
Right.
So we just gathered the staff together and we worked the numbers first, the financials, to find out how big of a staff we could have and how much we could charge to make it fair and make it something that the kids would want to do. And because they're not getting the in-person experience. They're not getting the nightly campfires. They're not getting the nightly drum circles. They're not getting the
ice cream.
A lot of the fun and ice cream. Yeah. I go. So we brainstormed a lot of hours. Matthew and I spent hundreds of hours on the phone trying to come up with a way to generate the magic, we call it, the camp magic online.
Okay.
And we lost some in the process for sure, but we were able to capture as much as we could, keeping the educational aspect of it as intact as possible, because that's really what we're there for.
Right.
And then, like you said, a lot of it is counselor oriented. I mean, I read these stories to the kids. We talk about it in the first page of their binder says, "I will make good choices today." Big letters.
Yeah.
That's been a big thing for us. It's like, hey, we're not just teaching drums. We're trying to teach about life through drumming. And we try to get them to read between the lines. Like, this is how you learn a paradiddle. Now, what goes into that? Well, the process that you're going to go through if you step back and read between the lines is the same process you do to get good at math or to get good at flipping burgers or to get good at starting your own business or whatever. It's just details and step-by-step stuff. And that's kind of what I don't like to use the word preach, but that's kind of what we talk about. And I read these motivational stories to the kids every day. Same stories for years, because I belong to this Motivation 123. It was a thing online, and I got these stories over the course of a couple of years, and I cherry picked out some stories, 5 stories that kind of help us progress through the week, and it's pretty awesome.
You're making a difference. I mean, really, you think about the motivational part. A lot of students or kids at that age, they're exposed to all sorts of different media, right? I mean, they look at social media. It's very rare that they're going to be sort of saturated with positive attribute, positive development. They're getting a lot of, unfortunately, I hate to sound like an old guy, but I know that so much social media is spent on judging and, trying to match up to unrealistic expectations and making really poor choices, right? If they have someone, I think that I love the dynamic that you've got father-son now, because they can see that this is not just a guy who's been doing this for 30 years, who's, maybe he can't relate to us. So then they see as a younger student, your son who's coming in, who's not that much older than they are, but has done this and learned through all of these positive development tools. And so, Matthew, for you, when you've heard those stories and you saw how it impacted you, does it make it easier for you to connect with a lot of these younger guys and say, hey, I've been exactly where you're at. I know that it might not seem realistic until you do X, Y, and Z. Does it help you that way when you're instructing?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I kind of think of myself in some ways as the poster child for the camp.
Yeah.
That I was there for so many years, and coming up through this program and really taking everything to heart. That I feel like my story is kind of a success story of the camp too, because what I did was I took all of those principles and those ideas and kind of executed them for 10 or so years, and then now I'm back in front of them at a certain place in my career, and they can see what it actually looks like if you take these ideas and commit yourself to them in some way. And the ideas that it's not like they're anything crazy. I mean, it's the ideas of hard work and dedication and breaking things down into a simple process and being motivated and staying hungry. It's all of the things that you would want your own kid to know, and that we sort of take advantage sometimes of that people know these, or that people actually execute on these. So it's those fundamental principles, and then I just happen to kind of fulfill those within this style of drumming, and then it can be some sort of representative for it, or some sort of role model to them.
It's great in the chat here. This is wonderful because a friend of mine who's Santa Clara Vanguard alumni, Cheryl Bland, she's here. She said, Alan's making a difference not only to marching percussion, but he's made a difference to young developing musicians for years. And I agree with that. And I think, what you're talking about, Matthew, having that impact at a relatable level and be able to take those positive principles, it stands a long time past the drum camps, right? I mean, when they get to have to go back to school, right? They develop principles after the summer where they've seen, oh, wow, I can approach my puberty or my, teenage angst years with a whole different perspective because I've developed these positive attributes. Do you feel, and I can tell you from my own experience, oh, look, Matt Savage is here too. Hi, Matt. Good to see you here. I know from me, drumming saved my life. When I was a teenager, I mentioned this before, we went live, that I grew up in the woods and had begun playing music as a clarinetist. And there are all sorts of reasons that I switched over to drums, pretty much originally because I knew that it was tougher to pick up girls with the clarinet than it was with drums. But I do know that the physical part of drumming, I mean, there's a mental part for sure, but the physical part of drumming as a teenager allowed me this opportunity to get out all that stuff that I really needed to, to express myself with. I could hit things and get away with it. Right. And so drums really were a physical part that was like a coping mechanism for me. And then it evolved into something that I want to do that the rest of my life. And so, Matthew, you talked about you're the poster child for the camp. You got to learn all the attributes of marching percussion. You wanted to get into drum corps. And as a drummer, when you look at goals of having this as a career, there are all sorts of things you can do involved with drumming and education, but people might feel limitations because they think, oh, at 21, drum corps is gone. I have no other opportunity to do this, but you find a way. So let's talk a little bit about your development, and then we'll talk about Alan's career development because he's got some really interesting stories about that. So Matthew, you first.
Yeah, so I'll give you the story from the beginning. I started drumming when I was 9 years old, and that was, I'd seen my dad doing it, and that I just wanted to emulate him and wanted to get involved with that. But really, part of it too, the more touching side of the story, is that I just wanted to spend time with my dad, right? And so, especially as a working musician yourself, like a lot of times you can't be around the house because you have to go do things. You have to play gigs. You have to do that. And it forces you to be gone sometimes. So in some ways, playing drums and playing music was a way for me just to get to spend some time with my dad and to get to do that. And so it was this really special moment for me. And I remember that I only found this out after the fact, that I guess I had kind of a natural inclination toward rhythm and drumming in particular. And my dad was kind of pushing me along. And I didn't really know this. My mom warned him about this, but said, don't push him too much or you're going to push him away.
Right.
And sure enough, after maybe 3 months, maybe less, I quit drums. I didn't want to play the drums anymore.
Worst day of my life.
Wait a minute.
I said, are you kidding me? You're crushing this. Right. Oh my gosh. No.
Yeah. Dad's pride all of a sudden went out the door and thought, I'm disowning you. No.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you, was it partially because you were being pressured into it, but also I understand living in dad's shadow kind of thing, right? I understand that your dad's revered as one of like the greatest percussion educators out there. And my son, as a drummer, whenever we went anywhere where other people would say, "Oh, well, yeah, of course you're a drummer. Your dad's a drummer, right?" And myself as a musician, my dad was a professional musician, artist, and people would sort of lump me into, well, yeah, of course, how cute, right? How cute it is that you're following in your dad's shadow. That's intimidating as a teenager, right? So is that one of the reasons that you bailed, or was it?
It wasn't for that. I think I was too young for that because I was 9 years old when this was all happening. Like there wasn't that social pressure. Like no one knew that I played the drums outside of my house. I hadn't gotten to that point where I'd even tell people. But I think that what it was, especially when you're doing it to spend time with your dad and you're looking for this relationship there, that as a teacher you have to push your student. And so I was feeling this almost this pushback that I was looking for bonding time and for praise almost. And as a teacher, you're not going to give that to your student. So they're going to push you. And so it's like, well, this sort of negative feedback isn't what I'm looking for. I'm out of here.
Right. Yeah. As educators, and I would bet you could both tell a bunch of stories about youth sort of inability to handle constructive criticism, right? It's hard to hear that you're not perfect. Right now in this day and age where everybody's encouraged, everybody gets a trophy for participating, everybody, and I believe that, there's a really great way to communicate a critique where you can help develop somebody's skill and not crush their spirit, right? So I think, and part of that is preparation for that, because if somebody comes in and they've never been, like taught to accept critique, they're going to think, oh, this guy's an asshole. He's, this guy's being mean to me. And, right. And so you mentioned earlier when it gets hard that first day when people want to go home. Unfortunately, some kids, they've not been sort of exposed to a challenge, right? So, tell me, like, Alan, I'd love to know, like, what is your approach to be able to get through to some of those kids that have never been exposed to it, so that you're preparing them for real world stuff?
I throw things at them,
and aim to hit. Yeah.
Oh wait, that was the 70s. Never mind.
Right.
That's how we taught in the 70s. We threw things, and But
I've heard about those instructors.
We've evolved. Man. It's true. Some kids just are too sensitive, and they can't. For me, I probably err to the side of too blunt.
Yeah.
Matthew's laughing.
A little bit.
No argument there. Okay.
I don't like to sugarcoat stuff, but at the same time, I try to not be a jerk.
Sure.
But sometimes if you're in the heat of battle and you're trying to get things done in efficient, like I like to work fast.
Yeah.
I like to get things done fast, and then we can take more breaks, right? So if it's like Johnny, you're slow. Sally, you're dragging the thing. Rather than, hey, Johnny, if you'd think about playing it a little fast, it's like there's not time for that.
Yeah.
You're slow, Johnny. So sometimes they take that as maybe being a little too direct or whatever. And I probably err to that side of it. I know other people that err completely to the other side and just never get to the point.
Yeah.
There's also the teachers that I've worked with from time to time that do blanket statements. Like when you're working with a whole group, we need to do 3 things better this time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the kids knew what to do better, they would do it better. Sometimes you have to single out Johnny and say, Johnny, you need to do this better. And Susie, you need to do this better. And Bill, you need to do this better. And then it's better, and sometimes kids can't handle that.
Sure.
And that's a drag. And I wish I was better at sugarcoating to a certain extent. But.
Well, maybe it doesn't need to be sugarcoated, but is it possible to say, hey, before we get started in this camp, I'm going to tell you, I'm direct, I'm blunt. And sometimes it's going to sound like I'm kicking your ass, but I'm doing it because I really want, I don't know. I know for me, when I taught drum set lessons, there were 2 kids that I remember that I made cry. And I'm a sensitive guy, right? And when one of the parents came back and said, you made my kid cry. And I said, did they tell you why? And I said, well, your son spends all of his time at that point, playing Nintendo, and he was showing up and he wasn't practicing. And for me, it's not that I care as much that he's wasting the time. For you, A, he's wasting your money.
Yeah.
B, he's wasting time that he could actually get something really cool and substantial out of this. And so when I told him, I said, you don't need to come back and throw your mom and dad's money away. If this is what your priority is, Nintendo, then just do that. And I know as an educator, it's difficult to get to that point where that somebody may have, their feelings were hurt, but your intention is to make them better, right? And so
I have a funny story along those lines. Kind of a dark moment in my teaching career, but I teach about 30 students a week and in my home studio, and out of that, I bet I enjoyed 4 of them.
Okay.
The other ones were money gigs, honestly. It's like they were kind of getting better, and some of them practiced and some of them didn't. There's this one kid in particular that he rode the bus to his lesson and never practiced. Never. He was just, and I don't care how good a kid is. Yeah. I could care less how good they are. If they're trying really hard, then I'm all about digging in. This kid wasn't trying. He wasn't practicing. Nothing was happening. Same thing. I told him, I said, you're kind of wasting your mom's money here. I said, but, I kind of need the money. So how about this? How about you take the bus to the mall on lesson days and play video games? Tell your mom to keep sending the check. That way everybody's happy.
Oh, my God. Oh, man.
I'm telling on myself here. That was a dark moment, but we ended up not doing that. I called the mom and I said, look, this isn't working out.
Yeah, that's so tough, man. It's interesting to be able to find out, 10 years, 15 years later, if that kid is actually motivated now.
I know. Who knows?
You know what? Honestly, I think back and the music teacher that I had in high school, I had a chip on my shoulder because he'd mentioned, because I was a cocky little punk, and I grew up, like I said, I grew up in the mountains, and I was in this cowboy school where I was this long-haired rocker, and I wanted to stand out, right? And this teacher didn't understand me, and he'd say, like, I could tell you why you're not going to proceed and progress in music is because you're not disciplined, and I hated him for it. Because he told me what I couldn't do. And I used him as a motivating factor. First time we did national TV, I called his voicemail and I said, hey, 8:00 on NBC, check it out tonight. And then I realized later that, had I gone back and looked at what I could have gotten from him instead of having this chip on my shoulder, I would have been a better student. I probably would have been a much better drummer. And, it just showed my immaturity, right? And so I look back on that now and I've got some regret about it. If I were to see him again, I'd certainly apologize. Have you had those experiences, either one of you, where, a student has come back and said, guys, I was a shitty student. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And some of them didn't end up pursuing it, not only as a career, but even as a hobby. Some of them hung the sticks up at some point and never play again. Others still play and they say, thank you for kicking my butt, Thank you for being harsh with me. Kind of got me off top dead center. And yeah.
And how about you, Matthew?
I haven't gotten any of those. I think that I haven't been teaching long enough at this point to get to that point where they say, I'm sorry for being a bad student. But I've definitely had it happen where something that we did like really resonated after the fact. And so I get people that do come up and say, when you did this 10 years ago, that really inspired me to do X, Y, or Z. And so even though it hasn't been someone who was of the tougher variety to then come back and acknowledge that, I have had some of those experiences where the little things that you probably don't remember as a teacher left a huge impact. And I remember those for myself too, of there's no way that some of the things that shaped me that teachers said, good or bad, they've stuck with me this whole time. There's no way the teacher would remember that, because for them, it wasn't some substantial moment, but for whatever reason, it really hits you strongly as a student.
Can you think of one of those really positive attributes, the moments where a teacher just influenced you in a way that you'll never forget?
On the spot, I think I'm going to have a hard time coming up with that, but
that's okay. Yeah.
I certainly remember the feeling of failure. And so even if this wasn't a specific thing from a teacher, like I remember all the feeling of all of the things that I've been rejected from, all of the jobs that I've been passed up for, all of the festivals that I didn't get into, all of the competitions I didn't win. I remember those things. And again, no one cares. No one who placed me in those things gives it a second thought. But those stick with me and drive what I do afterward.
Okay. So they're inspiring to you to make you want to progress and do more.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the, I don't remember the quote, but there was a quote about Michael Jordan and all the free throws that he missed in practice, right? Or all the shots that he missed. But, you know, the ones that he made certainly counted. And there were so many thousands or millions of shots that missed. How about you, Alan? Do you feel like you had an educator early on that kind of started you on a path that maybe changed your direction?
Yeah. I can't, you know, obviously like Matthew on the spot, I can't remember any specific thing somebody said because it's, you know, I've been doing this a couple years, but, but I got a great start. My junior high, we were junior high back then, 7th, 8th and 9th grade was junior high. I had a junior high teacher for the first year and then he left and moved to Portland. His name was Gene Morrison. Actually, his son, Tim Morrison, just retired from the Boston Pops. He was the trumpet soloist with the Boston Pops. He's an amazing Yamaha artist. But I went to junior high with him. Yeah, my claim to fame. Anyway, Gene, his dad, had a percussion class, had a drum class. And this was in the 60s. In late 60s, we had a big board with angled practice pads with rubber, and we would learn rudiments, and he was way ahead of his time. And I think that's probably one of the big things for me that got me going in the right direction. And then I had a great high school band director, and then I marched some rinky-dink drum corps, and that was fun to do, and I learned a lot. I had some great teachers in those small drum corps, and then college and all that. But yeah, as far as any one person saying X or Y, I don't remember anything.
Well,
but
it was
had great teachers.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously there were some out there that it started you on this path because you've got a pretty remarkable career. You've done a lot of interesting things along the way, not just obviously as an educator, but you know, in your experience with some celebrities. You want to talk about some fun stories there?
Well, the weirdest gig I ever had, which was one of the most fun, was I was the drummer for the Smothers Brothers for a while.
Oh my gosh,
young people aren't going to know who the Smothers Brothers are, but they had their own they were two brothers that were a comedy act, and they did music as part of their comedy act, and they had a TV show back in the day with Mason Williams but they still tour. I don't know if they do now or not. This was several years ago, but I did all their Northwest shows, and it was fun because it was celebrity time, you know. There was big audiences, and we got to ride in limos and stay in the best hotels, and it was pretty crazy. But you know, other than that, other weird shows like celebrities, B-list celebrities, you know, that are like some fundraisers that you do where the guy from General Hospital is also a singer, and he sings a little bit, and you play with the backup band or whatever. But you know, crazy.
I mean, you know, people might think that, you know, when you're affiliated or associated with any of those, you know, quote unquote celebrity status people, that money's just rolling in, you know, and like, you know, you're padding your bank account forever. It's more of a resume piece a lot of times, right? I mean, there's maybe a little bit of coin that goes along with it, but it's better for stories and podcasts later on, I think, you know. So I would love to know along the way, did you feel like this avenue that you're both on right now, do you feel like this is the trajectory that you were planning on, or is this sort of evolved into something that you didn't expect, but you're rolling with? How about you first, Matthew?
Yeah, this is not the trajectory I thought I'd be going on. It's changed. I mean, I was really lucky to know young that I wanted to do percussion in some way. So about the time that I started attending the drum camp for the first time, when I was maybe 12 years old, I think that after that first year, it was so transformative for me that I decided, like, I want to do that. This is what I want to do. And I had this great role model because I knew that it was possible because my dad was already doing it. Right. I think that most people don't know that you can have a career in music, especially in just percussion in general, or like what avenues are out there. So I was lucky to decide early on that that's what I wanted to do, because then I could dedicate myself fully to it and do all of the hard work and set myself up for success as well as possible. But it transformed in a lot of different ways. Like in the beginning, all I wanted to do was drumline stuff. So the only reason that I started playing mallet percussion instruments or anything besides marching snare drum in the first place was because my dad told me, if you want to do this, you need to get a percussion degree. And to get a percussion degree, then you need to you need to be able to play mallets and some of these other instruments. And so that's the whole reason that I started doing that. And I went on and did all of my drum corps stuff, and eventually got obsessed with concert percussion, with mallet playing, solo playing, and playing in small groups with other quote unquote classical musicians. And so that's kind of what I do now. I teach percussion at the college level and in all sorts of other ways as well. And I play with various groups, or what we call chamber groups of small people, and play a lot of classical percussion, a lot of marimba, a lot of various things there. And I get to do the drumline thing for about 40% of my life. So it's like my life is kind of half classical musician, half marching drummer. And so no, I knew that I'd be in percussion, but I had no idea what shape that would take. And it transformed so many times over the years.
Oh, your mic's off, Kevin.
Being able to pivot. Sorry, one sec here. I've had to switch. Speaking of pivoting, my system has been completely changing as we go here. So I'm talking on my phone now versus a computer, because my stuff was starting to glitch out. So
okay.
And change perspective on how we approach our careers. When you talked about having gone a completely different direction, Matthew, when you were growing up and looking at the drum corps stuff, I mean, I've had a lot of friends that did, that marched at pretty high levels, and it's a really grueling kind of gig. You want to talk about that experience getting like through high school and onto drum corps, like what your experience?
Yeah. So I loved it. I mean, it's exactly what I wanted to do. And the first year that I marched I was 14 when I made it. And that was with Oregon Crusaders when they existed back in 2006. And so I marched there for 1 year, and I made this deal with my parents because I knew I wanted to go to the Blue Devils, but I was a freshman in high school at that point, and I had until I was 21. So we knew that they knew that they would like to see me at some point in the summer. And if I marched straight from freshman year on, I would have been gone the next 8 years straight. And they never, I would have been in school half the time, but at least in the summers when you can actually see each other, I would have been gone for 8 years or so. So I made this deal that I'll march my freshman year, my junior year, and then when I get into college, I can march those 3 years or whatever I had left at that point. So I started doing it when I was pretty young, and knew that I wanted to go to this one specific corps, the Blue Devils Drum and Bugle Corps down in Concord, California. And they were always my role models and my musical idols there. So I was ready for it when it came, and I loved the physical aspect of it. I know it's notorious for being difficult, right? For being physically demanding. I mean, I can't remember if we mentioned, maybe it was before the show, about you're rehearsing 12 hours a day, and then you get on the bus and you drive for 8 hours, and then you sleep on the ground in a gym, not in hotels. You sleep on the gym floor, you get up, you rehearse 12 hours, you play the show, you do it again. And so I knew what I was getting myself into, and I loved that part of it. Okay. And how hard it was going to be. It really was this challenge for myself that I was looking forward to getting pushed in that way. So I don't know, maybe it's pseudomasochism or something, but I loved that part.
It's, to me, I sort of equate that corps, especially, or that group, it's like the Navy SEALs or the Army Rangers. I mean, especially of drum corps, and I had some professional friends that have gone on to play with bands that we've toured with that played Blue Nights, and they talked about how much easier it was to tour now, even in a van, traveling around the country, where they'd get a hotel sometimes, they get, breakfast, and, there's a lobby call that's much more manageable than those days. Drum corps, and you guys had ridiculous hours too, right? Weren't you up way before the sun came up? And
so they were definitely long days. There are, believe it or not, compared to some of the other groups, Blue Devils was one of the more relaxed groups. So they're actually thought of as, in this world of everyone is working really hard, they're actually thought of as kind of the lazy group in some ways.
Really?
That's not to say that the group doesn't work. It's still extremely hard work, but they actually have, and again, I just completely biased, they have more talented members, so they don't have to do as much in some ways, or they can, the work smarter, not harder was kind of a slogan there. But yeah, I mean, I've still never done anything as hard in my life. Like everything that I do now, everything that I'm pushed to do, it's no big deal. It kind of pales in comparison. So it was an overtraining in a lot of ways that ended up, really, really serving me well, because when you stack it against that, then everything's easy.
Isn't that so nice? I mean, really, that's like, Alan, you were talking about being blunt and to the point in a lot of ways. You're getting these students into a position where they can get to the meat of solving a problem without kind of taking the long, circuitous, softer way. And, like Matthew, as as we get older and life gets more challenging, we've got a few more responsibilities to tackle. Being disciplined and having a lot of that stuff manageable. You've developed these coping mechanisms, to be able to handle harder things, more adversity, and so you, your time in the special forces has served you well.
Matthew's always had an amazing work ethic, even from the time he was 9 years old. But I told you one of the things that we talk about at drum camp is I will make good choices today. And Matthew we kind of encourage the kids to take this sheet from their binder and put it up on their mirror, so they see it every morning when they get up. They see that and they're like, I'm going to do that. Matthew also had a thing for years on his ceiling. I believe it was on his ceiling. When he would wake up, and he'd look up at the ceiling and it would say, "Don't let anybody work harder than you today."
Nice.
Yeah.
I think whether you're in drums or not, having both of those notes on your reminders on your refrigerator might be real good. Yeah. Now, Alan, I know that you've got another son as well, correct?
I do. He's 2 years older than Matthew. His name's Christopher.
That because he's not a drummer, is that right?
He actually, his journey was interesting. In high school, he was one of these kids that could pick up any instrument and play it. Okay. He played trumpet. He played all the saxophones. He played piano. He played drums for about a year with the jazz band. And it's funny, I don't know whatever happened with Christopher. He never, I would ask him, "You want me to help you with the drums?" No.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was some kind of sibling rivalry thing going on, because I have no idea. And we just never talked about it. I said, "Oh, let me know if you want some help with this. I'm more than happy to help you." I got excited, and he's like, "No, I'm good."
Too proud.
And yeah, and he went on to excel in the car business, and he's knocking down more money than all of us put together. He's a sales manager at Salem Volkswagen, which is a part of the Lithia Corporation. And he's crushing it. He's got a great family, great house, 3 kids, wife. He's loving it.
Yeah, nobody gets into the education world, especially music education, with hopes of music or with financial, sustainability. It's always a struggle for sure.
Yeah. I've been a kept man for the last 20 years because my wife was smart enough to get a school teaching job.
Oh, yeah.
She's a middle school band director, still in the music business, but at least we have that security of a paycheck and benefits and retirement and
smart thinking, man. That's right. Speaking of education too, Alan, you've got some books out, and um, how has that have you been able to balance that during the pandemic? Have you been able to take a little more time to do some writing?
A little bit. Not as much as you'd think with all the time that I've had on my hands, but it's not all been used smart. FaceTime and a lot of TV.
Right.
I did try to work out quite a bit, physically, and kind of get that going. Although I just had shoulder surgery about 5 weeks ago, so I'm kind of nursing that back. But the writing thing, I do have a rudiment book out called Mastering the Rudiments. It's published by Alfred Publishing, and it's a pretty good step-by-step 28-week self-help book to learn the rudiments, basically. Everybody's got a rudiment book. There's a million of them out there. Matt Savage has a great one as well. Any system done perfect is a perfect system.
Right. Yeah. Did you study out of Dad's books, Matthew?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And the very first, I still have it. My very first book was one, I don't even think this one's published anymore, but he used to have one that was kind of to get you started with rhythms and drumming. And so, yeah, I played out of everything that he had.
That's so great, man.
Yeah. And I do a lot of writing for Tap Space now. The company in Portland, Jim Casella's company, Jim Casella and Murray Gussick's company. And I do write a lot of chamber music and stuff, percussion ensemble stuff for them. It's pretty fun. They're great guys, and they trust me to with whatever I send them.
Well, to diversify too, right? I mean, you're able to do so many different things. That's one blessing, right, about what we do, is that if you can mix up the music so that one thing doesn't become mundane, and you're sort of challenging yourself all the time. Great thing.
Well, like you wanted to hear about my progression. I mean, when I went to college, I graduated in 1980 from the University of Oregon. I studied with Charles Dowd.
Yeah.
And then was pretty much a drum set player and private teacher for the next 20 some years. And then I started a publishing company. I was on these gigs. Matt Savage actually got me on this gig recording for Hal Leonard down in LA, their marching band album. They would put out a CD every year, and we would go down and play the drum parts on this recording session. And honestly, the drum parts were not very good. And I got irritated because I just wanted to get a gig writing drum parts for them is all I wanted. And they blew me off. And so I said, well, screw you guys, I'll start my own company.
Yeah.
So I started Marching Percussion Northwest, and that morphed into Matrix Publishing, and we published marching band music, full-on band stuff, percussion solos. We did jazz band music. We did concert percussion stuff, and I did that for 15, 20 years, and then sold that company. And now I just do a little bit of school teaching, percussion classes. I do clinics for Yamaha, Remo, and Sabian, and Vic Firth, and the camps, and not much playing anymore. I play in a community band for fun,
Yeah.
Give back and play a little bit. That's kind of how it's gone, kind of almost full circle. And now I'm looking at semi-retirement right now. I'm turning more of the camp stuff over to Matthew as much as I can get him to take.
You built the franchise. There you go. That I ask people that are really passionate about what they do, sometimes if time and budget were no limit, if you had a benefactor, Jeff Bezos or something, came out and said, hey, Alan, you've got a blank checkbook, do with it what you will, what would you how would Alan Keown's musical sort of venture change?
I think I would move it to the Bahamas.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it would change that much, actually. Honestly, I think we've got such a good system with the camp. We've got the good teachers in place. We've got a great curriculum. The kids love it. Nobody gets rich off it, but that's okay. It provides some income for some people, and an experience for kids that for the past 33 years has been a positive one for the most part.
That's beautiful, man. What a great legacy. I talk a lot about legacy on the show too. So maybe we start with you, Alan. If you're at your final days, right, post retirement, that aside from what your son might be saying about you, what would you want your community, the people that knew Alan Keown, what would you want to leave behind?
I'd want them to remember that I cared a lot about percussion education, and that I was a good guy. I think I don't need to be a star. I don't need to be a international name or any of that. I probably left some things laying on the table in my career by not pursuing certain things or certain angles or working the angles better or whatever. But I decided when I was in college, I was going to go get a master's degree and then get a doctorate and then teach college. That was my goal when I first got out of college. And then I realized to do that, at least back then, you had to jump from gig to gig to gig. You had to go get this little college and then move up to this junior college and then move to this four-year school. And then eventually, hopefully, if you were really lucky, you got to a school that was in a place that you wanted to spend the rest of your life.
Right.
I realized I didn't want to jump around doing all that nonsense. I wanted to have a family and be stable and have a good time and just live life, And so we just stayed here in Eugene or Springfield and just started carving out, what I could to be a living.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, you've done a great job with it, and from everybody that I know that's interacted with you, I think your dedication to percussion education and being a good guy, you hit the mark on those. So not leaving those on the table is a good thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
How about you, Matthew? Do you you've got a long time to think about legacy, and I'm going to put you on the spot again, but you're an educator, you're a teacher right now. And so obviously you're having an influence, on the youth. So as an educator, I would imagine, that's part of legacy. But what is for you? Like, what would you really want to be recognized to have made a contribution, or what's important to you? What do you hold valuable as a legacy?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think a lot more about right now because so much of my life was spent in school. So I did the route that he was talking about. I did the bachelor's, the master's, the doctorate. I did 9 years in college, and I'm only third year out at this point. So most of my entire life has been spent in school and been spent with an eye toward a career in some way. And so I find myself actually asking this a lot right now. What is actually going to make me happy, or what is actually going to fulfill me? Because when you're working towards something, you think that it's at this final end, right? Like it's at a final job or it's at a final paycheck or whatever it is that you're working towards, that there's this thing that's going to fulfill you in some way. And I'm trying to think now, like what it is that will actually leave me fulfilled and that will be my legacy in some way. And what I'm trying to leave behind is that I inspired people in some way. And that I created great art, meaningful art, like enjoyable art in some way for people to look up to, and that will inspire them in some way, whether it's through the things that I play or my teaching. That's probably all what I can really hope to leave behind, is just this sense of inspiration in some way.
That's great, man. I love it. One of the things that you leave behind too, but since you and I had never met in person, but I just noticed this while we talked the entire time, it's rare to see you without a smile. Every picture I see, you got a smile, and I think as a newer educator in the industry where you're wanting to impact somebody, a smile goes a long way, attitude and perspective. And so I'm glad to know that, the youth of today have, they're in your hands. It's a great thing to see that got really positive direction, making good choices. Making good choices is such an important thing, right? So I got to thank you guys so much for being here. I wasn't able to see the rest of the chat since I had to switch devices here, but I know that you have a lot of both your colleagues and former students and admirers out there. So I want to thank them for being here too.
My brother even got on. Hi, Mike.
Your brother's there?
My brother's there.
Excellent. Well, Mike Keown, nice to see you here, man. I'm glad you're here.
He plays the stereo.
What's that?
He plays the stereo.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well,
That's his musical.
Right. Hopefully, he's dialing the right stations to be able to get those royalties coming in for us, right? So, I would love to be able to help direct people your way. I know that you both have websites. Besides, well, there's the AlanCowanDrumCamps.com. That's where people can sign up for this. I think the July session, and June is your deadline. Is that right?
June 15th. Yeah, it's an easier website to remember. We have drumcamp.net.
Okay.
And that just goes you to a real generic page, and then it redirects you to AlanCowanDrumCamp.com, which is hard to spell Cowan.
Yeah.
So drumcamp.net
Okay.
gets you there. And the camp is $250 this year. It's 5 days long, July 12th through 16th. It's going to be amazing. We have Ralph Hardiman. We have Ralph Nader. We have Colin McNutt. We have Sandy Rennick. We have Ivan Trevino, big star coming in. We have, who else, Matt? Who am I forgetting?
Stephanie
Vasilakis, along with the regular staff of guys, Matt Savage, Matthew, myself, Chris White, local Portland guy, Justin Priest, who teaches the Oregon State University Marching Band, Micah Bruce, who teaches the University of Oregon Marching Band. I mean, these are old friends of mine that are amazing people and amazing players and amazing teachers.
Yeah, they get an all-star crew just through association of Mr. Keown. This is beautiful. So drumcamp.net is how they can find you. And
Yep.
I will make sure that I've got this archived. So if you guys came in halfway through and you want to go back and check out all the revelations that Alan and Matthew brought at the beginning, you can do that if you go to accesskevin.com later this evening.
Matthew, what's your website? I get confused.
MattCowanPercussion.com.
Okay.
And then through a couple of the groups that I'm in, IcarusQuartet.org is my group with 2 pianos, 2 percussion, and then the other one, the Percussion Collective, I think is .com as well. So find me at any of those places, but Matt Keown Percussion is my main one.
There you go. It's spelled Keown. So
Thank you so much, Kevin.
I'm so glad to see you guys both here. Thank you, Mr. Keown, Alan, and Matthew both, man. You guys, it was really, really nice to get to know the backside of these wonderful educators and players. So thank you again. Alan, it really has been just a pleasure working with you over the last several years too, man. So wishing you guys the best of luck this summer. Get this virtual one done so that you can move back to in person and make good choices, right?
That's right.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a beautiful day. And I'll be back here tomorrow with Tony Catane, everyone.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Kevin.
You bet. Take care.